Today, we are kicking off 3 days of dynamic, visionary, and inspirational discussions about the future of Mars exploration, but with emphasis on technology and innovation. You will hear from many experts on technologies ranging from microelectronics to artificial intelligence to quantum to comms, digital biology, and more. We are living through a period of extraordinary technological breakthroughs and advances. Digital transformation has been the focus of organizations worldwide. And now, as we find ourselves spinning out of a global pandemic, organizations are sprinting forward. Our nation is sprinting forward. I can hear Nina Simone bellowing, "Everything must change." Even as evolutionary change is driving us, we are driving change. This environment of incredible acceleration compels us to innovate faster and with tremendous velocity. Some have even proclaimed that technological singularity, that hypothetical point in time at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to human civilization, may soon become our reality. So as we are considering our aspirations for Mars and deep space exploration, I invite you to join us today for a most engaging conversation about the future of tech and innovation. Each one of our distinguished panelists presents unique and diverse perspectives and insights on a range of technology and innovation topics. In the interest of time, I encourage you to review their most impressive bios online. Our first panelist is Walter Waltz C. Engelund. Walt began serving as the Deputy Associate Administrator for Programs in the Space Technology Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters in September of 2019, and provides executive leadership and management of the full range of space technology programs within STMD, with an annual investment value of nearly $1 billion. He is responsible for budget planning and allocation of resources and serves as the decisional authority for project and program content, ensuring that technology investments align with NASA strategic plan and roadmaps. Walt, thank you for joining us. Our next panelist is Ezene Uzu-Okoro, who leads civil and commercial space policy for the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy as Assistant Director for Space Policy. She was a NASA executive who has built, managed, and reviewed over 60 spaceflight programs in approximately 17 years, representing $9.2 billion in total program value to NASA. At NASA headquarters, Ezene led heliophysics portfolio of spaceflight missions, including the Punch, Tracers, and Magic missions on behalf of the Science Mission Directorate. Ezene, we are delighted to hear from you. Thank you for lending your voice. Our next panelist is Tiffany Bora. Tiffany is celebrated as a rousing speaker and thought leader who uses a biotech-focused mindset to stimulate leaders, companies, and industries to design for the best possible future. In addition to working as a founder and co-founder of several startups, she is currently the Vice Chair of Digital Biology and Medicine at Singularity University, located in the heart of Silicon Valley. Previously, Tiffany was the Faculty Director of Singularity's global ecosystem of experts and thought leaders. Tiffany, we are so excited to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. And finally, Deborah Elwyn Smith. Deborah is no stranger to us. She is the president and CEO of the Council on Competitiveness, a coalition of CEOs, university presidents, labor leaders, and national laboratory directors, all committed to driving US competitiveness. She has more than 20 years of experience as a senior government official, as the first Senate-confirmed Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy in the United States Department of Commerce and Assistant Director for International Affairs in the Reagan White House. Deborah, we are so honored that you've joined us for today's discussion. Thank you. Each of our panelists will provide a few minutes of opening remarks, followed by discussion. Now first to Walt.
JR, thanks very much for that introduction. And it is great to be here. Welcome, everyone. I do have a couple of introductory slides I'd like to share, and maybe just some thoughts about how NASA is actually set up and prepared to execute both the lunar exploration program and on our way to Mars. By way of introduction, as JR said, I run a set of 11 programs within the Space Technology Mission Directorate at NASA. That's one of 4 mission directorates. The other 3 being the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate, which is just like the name says, primarily focused on aeronautics and atmospheric flight. The Science Mission Directorate, which is where most of the robotic science and exploration missions live, both heliophysics, planetary science, earth science, and astrophysics. And then the Human Exploration Mission Directorate, which is really the home of the astronauts on the human spaceflight program. So go ahead to the next slide, and I'll just say the Space Technology Mission Directorate really serves all of the agency and all of our exploration initiatives across the portfolio. We actually have 11 programs within STMD, and as JR said, at about $1 billion of focused technology development investment. And we are targeting both lunar and Mars exploration in a big way. Our programs range from very early nascent laboratory research at very low technology readiness levels. We invest in universities and students and academia, also in early career individuals at NASA and within industry. We run the agency's technology transfer program, so basically taking technology developed within the NASA portfolio and pushing those out to industry and commercial enterprise. The agency's small business and small technology transfer programs are also part of our portfolio, where we engage with small businesses across the nation to basically build and create an engine of economic and technology development. Moving up the TRL spectrum as we move from left to right, the technology maturation element of our program is really the sort of the mid-TRL. We call it the Valley of Death, bridging that Valley of Death for technologies, getting them to the point where they're ready for technology demonstration. And in fact, that takes us to the technology demonstration element of our program, both small spaceflight technologies, flight opportunities, and technology demonstration missions, where we demonstrate in a space environment the technologies that are ready to infuse into missions. So go ahead to the next slide, if you would, please, and I'll talk specifically about our lunar and Mars technology portfolio. We have, over the last several years, spent a lot of time working at a strategy to help the NASA and the nation develop a lunar and a Mars exploration program. And it's basically summed up in 4 simple words: go, land, live, and explore. Just down at the bottom there. And basically the go part of our portfolio is really about rapid, safe, and efficient space transportation. We're investing in advanced propulsion technologies, both chemical and nuclear. The land portfolio is really about getting down to the surface of another planetary body or the moon, or even returning safely to the Earth's surface. So we have a lot of entry, descent, and landing investments, in particular for Mars, where we have landed just recently the Perseverance rover at about 1 metric ton. But as I'm sure you can imagine, to put humans on the surface of Mars is going to require something like 20 to 30 metric tons. So a couple orders of magnitude above and beyond what we've ever been able to deliver to the surface. So we are investing in those technologies. The LIVE portfolio is really about sustainable living and working farther from Earth. And you can see there, a lot of those technologies elements we're actually using the moon to demonstrate things like sustainable power and surface utilities, in situ resource utilization, or ISRU, surviving in extreme environments, like the extreme cold and even the extreme heat of other planetary bodies, including the moon, autonomous excavation and construction, and advanced robotics and autonomy. And if you look very closely, there's actually a trace from the lunar surface directly to Mars. So we're using the moon to demonstrate those technologies that will be needed for us to one day live and explore on the surface of Mars. So I'll stop there, and I'll turn it over to you, JR, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Well, thank you so much for setting the stage for us today. We are absolutely excited about NASA's activities and plans for the future. And certainly these missions require us to think in different ways, right, about our technology needs and the investments we will make to assure that we can realize these visions. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Ezine.
Thank you, JR. It is a delight to join an esteemed panel to discuss the technological innovations that will really move the needle on Mars exploration. The president on a phone call to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory said, "We can land a rover on Mars, we can beat a pandemic, and with science, hope, and vision, there is not a damn thing we can't do as a country." And this is exciting, especially given the overview that Waltz has just shown us of what NASA is doing. We will use all of this nation's capabilities and capacity for innovation to develop the experience that we need around the moon that will send Americans onto Mars. We are also on Mars now, as you saw in the Waltz chart, and studying the planet more intensely than ever before, developing the mission that will return samples from Mars to Earth. NASA's operating 2 rovers, a lander, and a helicopter even on the surface. And all of this is, of course, supported by an array of orbiting spacecraft, as was shown. At the same time, I think it's important to mention that we will continue to operate our multiple spacecraft that explore our solar system while developing new missions and supporting NASA as they continue to explore the moon and Europa and other missions that are potentially likely to explore near-Earth objects. And there are missions studying Jupiter, for instance, the Jupiter vicinity, asteroids in that area, and like Lucy and Psyche, which will study another asteroid. It's also important to note that we are investing in developing new technologies to improve the nation's space and sustainable aerospace capabilities, human and robotic exploration of the moon, Mars, and beyond, including returning Martian rocks and soil to Earth and developing satellites that will enhance and support breakthrough research near the Martian planet. We will continue to enhance research and development efforts in supporting NASA's space technology research and development portfolio. We will continue to encourage these early stage research efforts that will enhance U.S. competition amongst other nations and increase our competitiveness. And we will also work to broaden and accelerate the testing of technologies that will enable the next generation of deep space exploration technologies. One last important note is the research that is conducted on the International Space Station. The ISS has funded the discretionary funding request for more than $3 billion to operate the ISS, and use it as a research laboratory is important because it supports not just space station operations and cargo and crew transportation and research. But the research also benefits the exploration of life on Mars. And, we look forward to building a diverse future within STEM and within our workforce that expands initiatives that will attract and retain underserved and underrepresented students in engineering and other STEM fields, in partnership, of course, with universities and minority-serving institutions. So with that, I'm looking forward to a riveting discussion, JR, on our next step to get us closer to increased Mars exploration. Thank you.
SNA, thank you very much. And we really appreciate your policy expertise and insight. You raised some very, very important points from the inspiration that these missions are providing to national pride. It is exciting to hear the President's passion and enthusiasm for space exploration. You also highlighted the importance of our continued focus on STEM and workforce development, areas that I know our other panelists have been engaged in throughout their careers. So thank you very much. And our next speaker is Tiffany Bora.
Hi, JR. Thanks so much for making me a part of this conversation. I'm so delighted to be here. So for me, thinking about space and space exploration and getting humans to Mars is something that I've been thinking about since I was a kid, standing in my backyard in Florida watching space shuttles launch. I have been thinking about this for such a long time, and I know that most of us in this community are here not just because of the engineering and the technology challenges that we love sinking our teeth into, but also because of this passionate idea of what it means to be human, what it means to be human on Earth, and what it means to be human elsewhere. So I was lucky in that as training as a biologist, while I was in graduate school, I was able to participate in 3 Mars simulations. So I have direct firsthand experience with thinking about these challenges, not just about getting there, not just surviving, but what are we going to do to actually thrive when we have humans on Mars? So I'm interested in a lot of technologies that are about thriving, not just surviving. I'm lucky right now in this particular phase of my career, through a variety of initiatives that I'm working on, I have a huge view. So through my work as a biologist, I have a look at biotech, I have a look at medtech, genetics, CRISPR, all of these really fascinating things that are affecting human health, but also agriculture, food production, all of these things that we're going to need in order to thrive while we're on Mars and on the way there and potentially on the way home. But I'm also lucky in that my work with Singularity University is giving me a huge look at technology space, from energy to yes space to manufacturing to all kinds of computing, sensing, optics, all of this really amazing high-tech stuff. And I'm also lucky in that I get a chance to work with everyone from K to 12 students through university students up through startup founders, big multinational corporations, and now through my work with the Geotech Center at the Atlantic Council with governments as well. So I am coming at this technology innovation question from a whole bunch of lenses. How do we inspire the young generations in order to enter the STEM workforce and the other parts of living life as humans that we're going to need in order to get to Mars and to thrive there? What are the technological innovations? You know, we're probably going to end up talking about the COVID bump today. So I think this idea of bringing technology to people in their homes is something that's going to help us really set the stage for the mindset shifts we're going to need across all generations in order to get humans to Mars and to have us thrive there as a community and as a collaborative species. And then, of course, I get to look at where investments are being put. I get to see how convergent technologies are coming together. And this idea of there being reciprocity and cross-fertilization between trying to get to Mars but also to make the Earth a better place is something that I find really exciting. I know for me, climate change is one of those things that keeps me awake at night. And through my work with the Homeward Bound Project, I'm looking at how to increase the leadership of women from STEM backgrounds through policy, through technology, and a whole bunch of fields. So if there's really one thing that I want to be excited about and what Mars really means to me, it's about bringing people together across boundaries, across industries, across levels of expertise, and figuring out not just how do we get there, but what do we do once we're there in order to bring about this future that we're really excited to design together.
Tiffany, thank you so much. What a visionary opening segment. And when I think about your words on what it means to be human on Earth, that Mars exploration is not just about getting there, not just about surviving, but addressing the question of how will we thrive? And then you noted the importance of partnerships and collaboration, how we are innovating across industries, across nations, across sectors. And then you talked about bringing technology to people in their homes and the mind shift that must occur. Thank you so much for those comments. And now on to our final speaker, Deborah. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, JR. I'm delighted to be on this very distinguished panel to discuss the technological opportunities and challenges on our journey from the moon to Mars, and want to really commend the tremendous leadership of NASA and the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy in really bringing together the unity of purpose in how our technological investments, our research enterprise cutting across universities, national labs, and industry are really going to be galvanized as we undertake this next chapter in our journey into interplanetary exploration. You know, the America space program has had such a profound impact on industry. I mean, virtually every industrial sector has been impacted by our space program. And it was just 2 years ago that we celebrated the 50th anniversary of our landing on the moon and the Apollo program. And of course, consumer products have also had a tremendous transformation through our space program. I just read recently that the traditional mattress industry is really going to be gone because everybody wants now memory foam mattresses. And I remember as a child years ago when we were so excited to drink Tang orange juice that was developed, of course, for the space program. But on a serious note, you know, U.S. space initiatives have really paved the way for U.S. global dominance in aerospace. No other country comes close. Today, the United States has 51% of the global value added in aircraft and spacecraft, with the next largest producer, China, being about 7%. But most importantly, as my fellow panelists have articulated, we have an enduring legacy when we journey into space and beyond, Mars and beyond, because it's really the foundation of driving our innovation ecosystem with deep wells of potential. And of course, really driving forward this culture of exploration, discovery, pushing not just the boundaries of knowledge, but what is indeed possible and turning that into reality. And also the space program and the innovation that's driving it has had huge impact in our public-private partnerships, with the space acquisitions really helping to propel our great US companies such as Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon, and General Dynamics to global leadership. And of course, JR, in your leadership in the chief technology arena at Lockheed Martin, you know, your company is really at the pinnacle developing these capabilities to enable humans to work and operate in space, from processors and propulsion and protection and power, and very important, your leadership in hypersonics. You know, it's very exciting that Lockheed Martin's spacecraft Orion will be carrying crews to lunar orbit in the Artemis missions. And before we conclude today, being a Bronze Age classical archaeologist, I have to say something about Apollo, Artemis, and Orion. But on a serious note, again, there are really 4 reasons why we're at such a great inflection point here in the innovation that's driving our space exploration. As others have said, you know, we're living in this greatest time of the revolutions in space, in science and technology that are converging and colliding with the digital, biotech, nanotech, and cognitive revolutions, and the vast deployment of sensors, the Internet of Things, and big data, and moving into AI and the quantum platforms. And each of these technologies is so powerful, but they're now coming together to really define a new era of technological innovation at warp speed. Second is that the door to the industrialization of space is opening wider, and we're seeing great efforts underway to capture commercial opportunities in space. We've, of course, had the recent U.S. crewed missions to the space station aboard a privately built and launched spacecraft, a whole new era as well. Morgan Stanley now projects that the global space industry revenues could grow to $1 trillion by 2040. And again, the U.S. is leading the way. Third, the competition now has really changed. It had been a bipolar U.S., Soviet, Russia competition and collaboration. And now, of course, China's come into the game with great ambitions to be a superpower by 2045. And just this month, China launched its spacecraft onto Mars. So there's really no other nation besides the United States that has made such a successful soft landing on the red planet. And China's ambitions in space, of course, are also being driven by massive investments, billions and billions of dollars in next generation microelectronics, AI, etc., and a culture of competition that is perhaps, to say it mildly, not following the rules of the game in terms of intellectual property protection and cybersecurity attacks, etc. And fourth is that it's a very exciting time because the U.S. is really on the move, as we heard from our two distinguished speakers from NASA and the White House Science Office, with a unity of purpose to go forward. So it's a very exciting time, and it's really an all hands-on effort as we move this exploration forward with all the manifold benefits it's going to bring, yes, to innovation, to industry, to our science and technology enterprise, but to the imagination and creativity of human beings.
Deborah, thank you so much for those remarks. You really summarized so nicely and brought us full circle in terms of all the topics that we hope to address a bit more thoroughly during this conversation today. It's a perfect lead-in to our first topic for discussion. With such an august panel of experts and visionary voices, I cannot pass up an opportunity to revisit this issue of national priorities. How are current R&D priorities, technological trends, and national priorities setting the stage for a future on Mars? And perhaps we can begin by response from either Walt or Esene.
I can start. Thank you, JR, for the question. As the Vice President recently mentioned, there are national priorities that have been set that include climate change, cybersecurity, and STEM education. But in regards to space specifically, the sustainability and development of commercial space activities is a priority for this administration. The advocacy for norms and behavior for peaceful space activities, for instance, and the push for international cooperation in space exploration. And I'm sure Walt might mention a thing or two that NASA is doing in that area. So this administration really is focused on this exciting time we have in the space sector, where we just have a growing commercial sector. We have more innovative technologies that we are boldly testing out in cislunar space and on Mars. And we look forward to really supporting our agencies and commercial sector as they continue to move the needle in technological innovations.
Yeah, and if I could, I'll just follow up to that, Esme. Thank you. I think in the case of NASA in particular, we really are at an inflection point in our ability to utilize commercial capabilities, leverage the intellectual capital of the nation and the international partners. I think I for one, am really excited about the fact that this new administration is allowing us, just like you said, JR, a constancy of purpose. I think they are behind the Artemis program, our journey to the moon and to Mars. And I think that's going to give us the ability to harness the intellectual innovation and capabilities of an entire nation and to bring along the world with us. I think since the Apollo program It was proven that the world looks to the United States to lead. I think we're still well positioned to do that, but not without some competition, as has been mentioned. I think certainly the Chinese and the Russians are positioning themselves to be staunch competitors. So we're looking forward to the challenge and excited about the capabilities and everything that is aligning to get us back to the moon and onto Mars.
Walt and Esne, thank you so very much. As I hear your comments, I am inspired to think about, what could we be doing better today in terms of these issues and in terms of the mandates we have received, in terms of those national priorities to better lay the foundation. And I'd like to open this question up to Deborah and Tiffany as well.
Thank you. Well, I do want to highlight the imperative for returning our federal investments in R&D back to the level they were at least in 1964, when we had a high of 1.86% of GDP. In 2019, we were down to 0.065% of 0.65% of GDP going into federal R&D. And this really, as called for by the Council on Competitiveness in our groundbreaking report, The Next Economy, the New Age of Innovation, competing in this next economy, we have to have a tremendous increase in our federal investment in R&D. And it was very, very gratifying that President Biden articulated this pivotal importance in some of his early public statements to the country. Also connected to that has been our de-investment in the infrastructure of our innovation ecosystem. And of course, let's just turn to NASA. 82% of infrastructure and facilities at NASA are beyond their constructed life. So the Council on Competitiveness and our National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers, and we're very proud that Lockheed Martin is one of the big corporate leaders in that work. We have called for, in the new Jobs and Infrastructure Bill, to have a focus on the innovation infrastructure of the country as well. And this goes beyond NASA labs. It's the DOE labs. It's the entire complex of our nation has to have the modernization and the facilities to be able to operate at the frontiers of these areas. So two critical issues: restoring our federal R&D investment, and we think it should be, back to 2.5% of GDP. Perhaps that's way too ambitious, but still, we have to invest in that part of our future. And also the facilities and the infrastructure. We can't just focus on bridges and transportation. That's critical for all of us as Americans, but we have to focus on the infrastructure of innovation to drive this future. Two critical priorities.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And Tiffany, you have an extensive background in education and how we are training the workforce for the future. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a slightly different turn from what we've heard from the other panelists, which I think is really great. Another thing that we're seeing happen, not just at the educational level, but also at the government level, is a questioning of what we're doing with the technology that we're investing so much money in and frankly need to invest more money in. If anything, what we're seeing from this techlash against some of the tech giants, it's reminding us that technology for technology's sake, in my opinion, is not the goal. And we have seen over the past few years what happens when we're so busy investing in getting the tech to work that we're not thinking about the first order, the second order, the third order effects, or what is it that we're giving up in order to make those technological advances. So I'm really interested in that. I'm really interested in trustworthiness. I'm really interested in having citizens understand how to look at our technology and our science and understand what's being done, why is it being done, what's being done with their taxpayer dollars, and why are we doing these international collaborations that are so, so, so very important. And one thing that we've seen, not just in the United States, but around the world in the past few years is, if I can be dramatic for a moment, an assault on science. And seeing this happen during the COVID pandemic should be ringing a lot of alarm bells in terms of our priorities, where our priority can't just be about doing good science or good technology development, but in about how we communicate that, how we sell the public on what it is we're working on, how we involve the public in these various stages, how we involve different levels of the public, historically marginalized populations, historically empowered populations, who's spending the money, who gets to decide. There's so much more to technology and innovation than just how many dollars are we spending. And I'm excited to be seeing independent companies, corporations, government, and also international collaborations, as well as education, again, all the way down to the K-12 system saying, what is it that we're doing all this for? And how can we make sure we're doing it in a way that's building the technology for the future that we actually want?
Tiffany, thank you so much. Your comments inspire more questions. We're making such progress on many technological aspects of preparing humans for life on Mars. But are we really doing a good job of handling those ethical and cultural issues that come along with those technologies?
Yeah, let me give you a quick example, and then Deborah, I would love to hear what you have to say. As a biologist, I feel like the number one thing I want to know about Mars is there life on Mars? Is there native endogenous life on Mars, or was there in the past? If the answer is no, okay, that's super disappointing. But if the answer is yes, that begs a whole series of questions about not only our ethics towards other species, whether they're intelligent or not, but how do we want to go into the universe as stewards? If I can make a personal statement here, we haven't done a great job on the planet we've got. So what are we doing now at all levels to make sure that when we make this step to our next planet, that we are doing it in a way where we're learning from the past and building a better future?
I just want to jump in and add yet another dimension to what Tiffany has brought on the table that's so important. And that is when we look at the innovation capacity across our country, and we also address the inequities, the issues around diversity, inclusion in our scientific, our STEM workforce, but also in terms of socioeconomic issues. We really now need to look at taking a very, very strong, aggressive action to really equalize innovation capacity across the country. And by that, I mean, we can't really go forward where a majority of investments are in a few states or a few regions. It's great we have Silicon Valley as an innovation hotspot, and Austin, Texas, and Boston, and Chicago, and some other places, but we have a great group of universities spread throughout our country, the fantastic land-grant universities, national labs. And so it's very exciting to see the National Science Board and other leaders in the government looking at the geographical issues around equity and inclusion as being very much a part of this, and ensuring that all of our citizens have access to higher education at our elite universities, as well as these tremendously vibrant public universities throughout the country. So when I think now of the great challenges around equity and inclusion, it's also through a geographical lens as well, as in addition to ensuring that every American has the opportunity to contribute to a democratization of innovation.
Deborah and Tiffany, thank you so much for, you've inspired me to think about, this relationship between technology and the human dimension. Often as scientists and engineers and technologists, we are so focused on the technology itself, but it's always useful to take a step back and to think about these other topics. So I'd like to ask of Walt and Esme, what strategies and tactics could we put in place today in order to enable continued innovation in the future, and who might be responsible for doing that?
Well, if I might, let me just say that NASA certainly recognizes everything you're speaking of, Deborah. And in fact, this week, we're getting ready to announce a new program targeted at the K through 12 STEM education across the country. We're going to make available an opportunity in all 50 states for students to build CubeSats and help measure the Earth's climate and either give them a launch on a high altitude balloon, a sounding rocket, and perhaps even a ride to space in low Earth orbits. Our intent is to have an award in each of the 50 states. And just like you said, equalizing across the nation and making it available to everybody and feeding the pipeline of for the next generation of engineers and scientists.
And I will add that this administration has been already making the case for equity and a diverse workforce. And as mentioned earlier, we have to support human exploration. We just do, not just of the moon through the Artemis program, but also of Mars and beyond. And secondly, supporting the development of capabilities for, again, sustainable long duration human exploration that will eventually get us to Mars. Thirdly, we have to prioritize furthering, and we do prioritize furthering robotic exploration of the solar system and the universe. I mean, following the successful landing of Perseverance on Mars, we have the Mars sample return mission, the first mission to really transport Martian soil samples back to Earth. That is mind-blowing to me, and it's exciting and inspirational for the next generation of engineers who are learning all across the United States now and thinking up concepts that they could themselves propose and implement in the future. So we will continue to support human exploration, support the development of these capabilities for sustainable long-range exploration activities, and continue to further robotic exploration.
Thank you so much, Esme and Walt. Colonel Pamela Melroy, in her recent testimony for NASA Deputy Administrator before the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation noted, NASA does not operate in a vacuum, especially with the significant activities occurring in commercial space. And then she continued later in her remarks to comment, for America to continue to lead the world in space, it must do so in a way that inspires and benefits all Americans. So there are two threads there that I'd like to pull on. First, when we think about our aspirations for Mars exploration, cooperation or competition? Tiffany has already raised the issue of the importance of partnerships and collaboration and thinking about how we innovate across industries, nations, and sectors. But let's explore that a bit further.
Well, I'll jump in on the issue of competition. And, I did raise, and my colleagues also noted this, the challenges around China. And, we saw during the era of US-Soviet bipolar competition and two different social and economic and governance systems, that the space program was one area where we could collaborate and we could bring our respective capabilities to bear. But of course, the whole US program was really given a shot in the arm, as it were, when, Sputnik took off in the late 60s. I am very concerned about the collaboration with China. I serve on the Commission on the Theft of American Intellectual Property, and I'm very much in the weeds, as it were, of understanding just the profound implications of what's going on in terms of this transfer of wealth illegally, as well as following the rules of the game that have been set. And so I'm very concerned about how that will be structured. But putting that aside, I think it's just a tremendous opportunity in the space program going forward to really think about technology statecraft and how we can turbocharge our collaboration with our close allies, countries that share our values and our ethics and our belief in democracy and the rule of law and how individuals, should be treated. So You know, NASA has that incredible deep space facility in Australia. I had the opportunity to visit that a couple years ago. And so bringing our space collaboration into the heart of a new technology statecraft strategy, I think is very exciting as well. And it's something we should be doing because we know that all the technologies we're talking about that are essential, that are being developed, are dual use technologies with, you know, profound military implications as well.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think there isn't anybody here that doesn't believe, I hope there's nobody here that doesn't believe that a journey to Mars will certainly be an international affair, and we need the partnership of other nations and their technology and innovation. And I think NASA is setting the groundwork right now as we speak in bringing in partners through the Artemis program to get them on board with a low entry barrier. You know, even some of the nations that you wouldn't think of as traditional spacefaring nations. So obviously we're partnering with ESA and JAXA, you know, the big nations that we have in the past, but there are countries who have expressed interest in being part of that. And I think making that available to come with us on a journey to the moon and to Mars is a critical part of our strategy.
Thank you, Walt. NASA has this rich history of collaboration, even in eras of great conflict, right? When we think about the International Space Station and other projects that we have developed in coordination with other nations. And Deborah, I really enjoy this concept of turbocharging our collaborations. There is so much potential as we think about the technology needs where other nations could contribute, even those that may not be who we regard as sort of spacefaring nations, right? And Tiffany, any final comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that what we've been through as a planet in the last year and a half with the COVID pandemic has a lot to tell us about the benefits of international collaboration and the potential harm of this battlefield mentality, scarcity mindset, us versus them, who gets the vaccine first matters. No, I'm making the vaccine, I keep it, you can't have any. We have lived through the fallout of that mentality for the last year and a half. We have a chance here to learn something so important about how we face the next big challenges that are facing us, not just as a nation, not just as people who are aligned around a particular group of ethics or morals, but as an entire species. We're going to be facing that with climate change, and we're going to be facing that, I think, as humans move onto other parts of the solar system and perhaps even more than that. So let's not forget to look at what the last year and a half has taught us, because there are some really important lessons here about cooperation, about competition, and about what amazing things we can achieve when working together is the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. As we think about those amazing opportunities, as I reflect on Colonel Melroy's remarks during her testimony, she noted the importance of inspiring and demonstrating that these technologies benefit, or at least the NASA missions benefit all Americans. But let's think about this through the lens of technology. When we look across these technology threads, from hypersonic, supersonics, to microelectronics, biology, to quantum and AI. Can you share some examples, and this is to each of our panelists, on technologies and how they are impacting or could impact life as we know it here on Earth?
JR, I'd like to start by saying that I agree with our esteemed panelists in the area of international competition and cooperation. We need both. In some cases, we will cooperate with the same nation in some areas, and in some cases we will compete with the same nation in some areas. And to put a spotlight on cooperation, we envision being the center of gravity in not just scientific research, but also technological innovation, robotic and human exploration. And we see that as a priority for this administration, such that we work with our allies to ensure that we move the needle again in many areas, not just the exploration of other planets, but in many areas of science and technology. Climate change is an example of a great challenge we have, that we are spending a lot of resources to try to combat, to understand, to ensure that we are adapting and mitigating what we can mitigate, and also that we are preventing what we can prevent. So we have many opportunities, and this is an exciting time to be in science and technology, to be in aerospace, and roll up your sleeves and solve some of these problems.
And JR, let me just say, from a technology spinoff, and how do technologies that we invest in for lunar exploration or Mars exploration benefit us as a society? You can simply look back to the Apollo program. Everybody likes to talk about Tang and Velcro as the big technologies that came out, but look at things like the camera that's in your cell phone, the charge-coupled device that enables you to take pictures with your cell phone was really the outcrop of an investment in space telescopes. And the heart rate monitors that were developed in the Apollo program for the astronauts are now ubiquitous in both athletic devices and in our ability to monitor fetal infants. They're just the list goes on and on. I don't think the public really appreciates the magnitude of the technology spin in to our daily lives. So I think that will continue. I think the investment in the nation's space program provides tremendous benefit, and I think by having the moon and Mars as a focus goal will really amplify that. So I hope that we can continue, and just like Deborah said, I hope that we as a nation are willing to make that investment.
Thank you, Walt. As we are thinking about these technology areas and making them more real to the everyday citizen, Deborah, you have been a leading voice in advocating for investment in critical areas. And I would like to hear your thoughts for those who are private citizens who are joining us for today's session. What could the private citizen do to express support or be part of this experience, to express advocacy for much of this work?
Well, I think there are many, many ways the private citizen can do this. Everything from, convening in their communities and their schools, some of the excitement and thrill of the space journey, as it were, to young children, for them to be inspired. And of course, NASA's done a superb job over the years with their space camps. But on a serious note about the industrial innovation that has come from the space program that, Walt has mentioned, I think one frontier area that links to climate change issues and sustainability is how we will see, through the innovation, acceleration of dematerialization and the development of synthetic materials that have the potential to obviate the need for rare earth materials and many of the electronic subsystems. Rare earths, the United States has many rare earths, as do Australia and other countries, but for a variety of economic cost structure reasons and also in industrial targeting, we do not have the cost of production. This may be a blessing in disguise, actually, because they're very deleterious to the planet. So I see that, leapfrogging into a new generation of synthetic materials that will have, again, all the ramifications in human health, et cetera. We live in a world, a physical world, so we can't completely dematerialize, but that's one. And then the other is about, the energy to move beyond lithium batteries and to have the propulsion systems that are going to be required then be brought in, to enable us to reduce our energy carbon footprint in a huge way. So I think that linking some of the innovations that are needed and the technologies that are needed on this journey to Mars and beyond will also be part creating new ways and new systems and new technologies to reach our goals of decarbonizing the world and reaching the goals of producing more with less and taking away the human footprint that's been so deleterious to our planet.
Deborah, thank you so much. We've covered a wide range of topics today, and it's been a most enjoyable conversation. And in the final minutes remaining, I'd like to offer to each of you the opportunity just to provide a few concluding thoughts with our viewers. And perhaps we can begin with Walt.
Hey, thank you, JR, and to everyone. This has really been a fascinating discussion. NASA is, looked to provide leadership for the nation and the world. And we're doing that in a whole host of ways. We talked about the 4 mission directorates and all the different areas they're investing in, but really the human exploration program, coupled with the robotic exploration of the moon and the Mars, is something the world looks to us to provide leadership, and we're excited about our continued ability to do that. And again, all the technology and innovation that is required to achieve that is something that we're committed to providing, and we're happy that you're all here and want you to be part of the journey with us. So thank you again for inviting us, and we look forward to the rest of this forum. Thanks.
Thank you, Walt. We really appreciated your insights today as we celebrate NASA's continued leadership. And Esene?
Thank you, JR. Walt, those comments are very, very inspiring. NASA is a very exciting trajectory, and we are investing as a nation in all of our capabilities for innovation that will continue to push us closer to the moon and closer to Mars. And this administration is very, very supportive and very serious about our priorities in the areas of sustainable development of commercial space activities, of pushing for cooperation, international cooperation in space exploration, and of course, advocating for norms and behavior for peaceful space activities in addition to bolstering climate change. So we are very supportive of NASA and the commercial sector and other agencies that are working to innovate, and we look forward to moving as a nation to the next frontier.
Thank you very much, Esene. And again, we are so grateful that you joined us today. And we know that you have newly transitioned into your role within the administration after serving at NASA and a long career thinking about these issues and leading technology initiatives. So we are excited to continue accelerating along with you. And Tiffany?
Thanks. So I have 2 challenges for our community and our audience. So if you're working directly in the space sector, whether government or private or public, look around here on Earth. Get your team to ideate around, are there things that our technology could be doing to help go after humanity's grand challenges like the SDGs? What could we be doing by digitizing, dematerializing, democratizing, decentralizing this amazing technology that we are intending to benefit space and Mars and the future? What can we do with that today here on Earth? What are the low-hanging fruit? So that's challenge number 1. Challenge number 2, if you're joining this conversation in the Mars Innovation Forum, but you're not part of the space industry as your day job, think about what you're working on today and look up at the sky and ask, how can I take what my team is working on today, get it off Earth, get it 20, 50, 100 years in the future, and making it accessible to all mankind, no matter where it is that we live. That's my challenge to all of you, and I think you're going to be able to step up to it.
Tiffany, thank you so much. We hear your challenges, and we are excited to run along with you as well. Thank you for your great inspiration. And finally, Deborah.
Thank you, JR, and let me thank wonderful panelists for being together for this very exciting conversation. I think I'll look back into the millennia and think about the god Apollo, it was very prescient that NASA chose Apollo as the name for that incredible program that took us to the moon. Apollo was the god of sunlight, was the god of prophecy and oracles. And of course, innovation is a journey, but it's a journey that really never has an end. And so to think of Apollo as the god of sun and knowledge is one part of the duality of what we're facing now going forward. And again, I'm sure it was with great forethought that NASA chose the name of Artemis for the mission to Mars, Artemis being the twin sister of Apollo and being the goddess, yes, of the hunt, but the goddess of the moon. And you have the duality of the sun and the moon. And of course, there's duality in everything in human life. So let's think about, the philosophy behind those beautiful choices of names to guide these missions into the future. And I guess if I had the power, maybe I should have said this in our first question, if we could wave the magic wand, I would like to change the name of Mars, the red planet, and have the name be Gaia after the great Earth Mother, because I think that brings some of these things all together. But on a final note, let me leave us with a thought that's very, very relevant to our world today and really coming out of the COVID pandemic with great hope and for the future. And that is to think of Aristotelian ethics that begin with a concept that's so powerful for human beings. And that's the concept of eudaimonia. It's a concept that in English is defined as flourishing. And it's the ultimate human condition to be flourishing. And that is what our innovation gives us, the hope and the potential to not flourish as individuals, but very importantly for all of our fellow citizens in America and people around the world to live in a future of eudaimonia, flourishing.
Deborah, I am excited to be part of that future. Thank you for your visionary voice and for your continued leadership. To each of you, we're so grateful for your time today, for your insights, for your expertise, and for your great inspiration. To the audience, thank you for joining us. This concludes this session.